How exactly do you popularize a podcast? I'm going to give you some answers coming up next. Hey there, podcaster. My name is the Shannon, radio broadcaster, podcaster, and podcast producer. And today's video is powered by Agorapulse. And we're talking about how to popularize a podcast. Is this similar to promoting a podcast? I guess you could say it's similar to promoting a podcast. I've got a video on that you can go ahead and click on over here if this isn't the video that you're looking for. But I still think that there's some valuable information here that you can take away with you. So first, I want to talk about the word popularize, and I really don't like using the word popular. A podcast can become very interesting. It can become, I guess, if you wanted to use the word popular within certain niches. And what you have to understand when you create a podcast is that you aren't appealing to the masses. That is, you are not appealing to the masses. You are appealing to a specific niche of people. That's how podcasting works. This is pretty much how it has always worked ever since I've been in the podcasting space, and since I first downloaded iTunes and was able to listen to podcasts. You were able to listen to podcasts based around a certain niche, and that's all shown by the categories when you jump in to Apple Podcasts. You see that in Google Play now. You see it inside of Stitcher. So you have to understand that podcasting is niche based. All right. So we understand that. We've gotten that out of the way. But now, how do we, I guess you could say, make a podcast listenable or a little more popular, if you want to use air quotes on that? How do you make it more popular with people? So I have 5 things that I want to mention to you in this video. So let's go ahead and start with the very first one. I'm reading from my notes. Sorry. So first and foremost is that you have to create really great content. I think you know this. Number 1, create great content. Great content is going to be the thing that powers your podcast into the ears of those who are really looking for it. Now, what do I talk about? What do I mean when I say great content? What I mean is that if, say, you have a comedy podcast, well, you better be really funny if you're going to be talking about a specific topic or being in a particular niche. So again, I like to always use my guys who I'm friends with from the Small Town Murder podcast and Crime and Sports, Jimmy Wisman and James Petrogallo. Those guys are really funny, but they are funny and talking about something funny in a specific niche. In this case, they're talking about small town murders, and they're putting a spin on it, a very humorous spin about the murders that happen in small towns. Okay, so there's nothing hilarious about the murders, but they put their own spin, and so this has allowed them to garner millions and millions of listeners to their podcast. So you have to be really, really funny. Now, let's say that you're in a different niche. Let's say you're in some type of education niche, or maybe you're in the business niche. You have to make your content really, really good in I guess the sense that you're giving away the answers. So the way I have looked at podcasts that are, say, in the business niche is that anytime someone wants to say, come to me and they want to learn about podcasting, I'm just giving them all the answers. I'm giving everything that is out there, that every question that has ever been asked to me that relates to podcasting, that relates to radio, that relates to social media. I just share that information out. And it's like I'm just giving out the answers because the answers are already out there. But what makes you different, what make you stand out, is if you give your answers, you give your style to how you consult, clients, or how you create products, or how you execute on a certain task. That's really going to attract people who are looking for the answers. We have to remember that podcasting and YouTube and everything on the internet is all based around searching for particular pieces of information. So if you're giving the answers, people will come back to your podcast and they will continue to return because you're giving such great content. You're giving the answers out to them to help them. You have to remember that. Number 2, interview guests who have an audience. This is a great way to get more ears on your podcast so people can hit that subscribe button. So when you're interviewing someone or you're looking to interview someone, what I would do is I'd go into Twitter and I would research particular hashtags on a particular topic, and then I would see who is talking about that topic and see if there's anyone within that particular hashtag that has an audience that would like to come on to your podcast and do an interview, but B, would be willing to share your podcast out. And I'm going to guarantee you that 99% of the time they are going to share out their podcast to their audience, because who doesn't like sharing out something that they participated in? So I recommend that you find people within your niche that have large audiences to help drive traffic back to your podcast. You'll want to make sure that you're telling people in your podcast to hit the subscribe button, to go to your website, just any way to get them to subscribe to your podcast is going to be very, very helpful for you. Number 3, you can create podcasts that are specific around, say, reviews. Maybe you review a particular product. Maybe you review a particular service, or maybe you review a website. Maybe you review, it could be anything at this point. And you do those reviews and you do them at length, and you create this really great podcast about a particular product, service, whatever it may be. Products and services can range anywhere between actual, like physical products to reviewing TV shows, reviewing, sporting events, anything like that, and sharing those podcasts out to those particular teams. Maybe they're particular brands. It could be anything like that. Brands love it whenever you share positive reviews, obviously, but if you share a negative review, it's probably not going to get a lot of traction because no brand wants to share that out. So be careful what you're reviewing. Be fair in your reviews. If there is something about maybe a brand that doesn't set well with you, don't slander them, but just say, maybe this isn't something that would be useful for someone who is using it for a particular reason. You want to be fair in your reviews. Just like how I did the review for Acusonus and those plugins that you can use for Adobe Audition, I was very fair in my review. And so you could check that out, actually, that video up over here whenever it flies out onto the screen, and you can check out how I did that review. And they actually ended up sharing out that review on Twitter. So do reviews and get traction to your particular podcast. That's a great way of getting more ears on your podcast. One thing that you'll really want to do whenever you do some type of review like that is you want to have quality show notes that will break it down piece by piece for you. You can break them down in the beginnings of like a quick outline. You can create a quick outline, but then you can have the remainder of the show notes be like an actual review itself, or maybe you're interviewing someone. It could look like a written interview. You could do it that way. That's really valuable for search engine optimization. So when people are doing searches inside of Google, they can come across these particular keywords. Your website may pop up, and that's one way to get this passive traffic that comes back to your website. Number 4 is probably one of the most underutilized ways of getting traffic or creating some type of popularity effect for your podcast, and it's showing up on other people's platforms, showing up on their podcast, showing up in their Facebook Lives, showing up in the comments. A lot of people, especially podcasters, who think that it's difficult to get traction. Well, yeah, it is difficult to get traction, but if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to go in and comment and add value to that audience, then you probably will get the attention of maybe that particular content creator, and they'll say, hey, come on my podcast, hey, come on my YouTube show, come on my Facebook Live, or can you write a blog for me? I did this years ago when Google Plus was a really big thing, and I was sharing all the tips and tricks and everything that I had learned about Google Plus, and I was going into Google Plus and I was talking about what you could do within the actual platform itself. And pretty soon people were like, wow, he actually kind of knows what he's talking about when it comes to Google Plus. Even though I probably should have been talking about podcasting back then, doesn't matter. I was still adding value. So whatever niche you're in, you should be adding some type of value. I would recommend that you add the value in the comments. You see this on Facebook all the time when someone posts something and it's a really popular post. Maybe it strikes a nerve with someone and comments start coming through, and you see the actual originator who wrote the post. They will go in and they will comment. Not only will they comment, but they know that the algorithm will keep pushing the story up to the top of the feed in everyone else's feed because the Facebook knows that it is a popular post. So go in, add value to particular posts. Don't just share everything that you know how to do. Add value. Invest in the people. I would recommend that you go read the book, The Thank You Economy by Gary Vaynerchuk. He talks about the value of the customer regardless of what you're doing. The customer in this case is your listener, and your listener has to be equally important if you want to get people to come back and listen to your podcast. This works for radio, this works for video, this works for just about anything. You gotta care about the listener, the viewer, or the customer. It will always win every single time, and share and add that value. Lastly, you should be building an email list in some particular way. I don't care if you have a comedy podcast, if you have a business podcast, if you have an educational podcast. I don't care what it is. You should be building an email list some way. you not only are going to drive traffic using social media, you're going to drive traffic by word of mouth, but there's no better way than to continue to drive that traffic by building an email list and providing value on that email list. I've got a video that is right up here that talks all about promoting your podcast with email marketing that might be very useful for you. So I recommend that you build an email list. I know that some of you out there haven't even started building an email list and you've got podcasts. I recommend that you do this because it's one way to really strengthen and go deeper into the relationship of you and your listeners so that they can really find value in what you do. That's the most important thing. So build email lists, utilize an email list in conjunction with social media and social media marketing and social networks. That's really going to help drive the traffic back to you and your podcast if you're providing value in the podcast every single time. If you like this video, go ahead and leave it a thumbs up. Don't forget, down below you can hit subscribe, and there's a little bell when you hit subscribe that will notify you when I drop a brand new video that is just like this about podcasting or whatever it may be. And I'm more than happy if you share it with your friends and let them know all about my particular channel that is all about podcasting. It means a lot to me. And of course, if you need more details on podcasting, you're trying to start your own podcast for the very first time, download my essential equipment guide that is found in the comments down below in the description, and I'll leave that link right there. Also, it'll be at the end screen right here. I'll be over here on your right hand side. There is a quick start download that you can check out, and of course I'll leave a video over there all about email marketing that helps you build your email list with email marketing. So in the meantime, thank you so much. Leave comments, questions, whatever it may be, share. I'll talk to you soon.